Good morning, Jeff and John. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning, Alexis. I'm good. How are you?
Very good.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
thanks for doing this. This is kind of exciting. We've never done this before. At least I've never done this before as part of Shalom retreats. So I feel like we're breaking new ground here.
Finding some edges, yeah. Well, I wanted to talk this morning about the transpersonal retreat, and I was hoping we could just get started with you both sort of telling us the origin story of this retreat. How did it come about?
I think it was my idea. It really came out of it in the last few years of leading retreats. I've noticed that long-term shalomers, people who come regularly on retreats, seem to be having different experiences than people who are there for the first time or earlier type of retreat. And the experiences were always much more expansive, different openings. They may have come with an idea or intention to work on a certain problem or conflict or issue in their lives. But once they got into the process, once they got into the breath and started to open up, they always went to a more expanded spiritual experience. And I started to recognize that this process, the whole Shalom Network process, really is something that will just keep people growing and growing and growing and growing. And I wanted to explore this a little bit. I wanted to get people who have done a lot of retreats and done a lot of their ego development work, done their shadow work, get them together and see what would happen if we focused on this particular focus and breathe them and see what happens. So it's a real experiment, and I think it may open us to understanding the Shalom work in a more advanced way or a different way. And I called Jeff because I knew that, because we've shared some history in these realms, and
We've also known each other now for 30 years.
Yes.
Wow.
So
we're the only leaders who work with Jerry Judd, I believe.
Wow.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
the only leaders who were on retreats with Jerry Judd.
Mhm.
He was like 15 at the time, I think.
You're so kind, friend. You're so kind. Right. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
John, when you called me, I felt this sense of immediate enthusiasm because it's in part with a sense of like, how much can you aim, and whether we can actually consciously set an intention to transcend these concepts about what it is to be a self, right? And we were talking just, Alexis, just before you got up, well, before you hit record, about like, we want to explore what's the story that we carry about what it is to be a self, and we're constantly projecting that out, and then that's a filter that truthfully filters what comes back in terms of information about self, about love, about reality, about other people. So, John, this idea of intentionally saying we're gonna work with a larger model of self, a self that's beyond the skin, encapsulated ego, to use that old Alan Watts expression.
Yeah.
So, if we're consciously talking with each other about a different frame, then the great adventure is, okay, what do we then find comes back into the room, into the circle of people, into the body of the person on the mat? Like, what new information about who you are do we get to find out about?
That's interesting.
Right? Yeah, that's really exciting.
Right.
So one of the other origins of this, I put together a workshop a couple of years ago on transpersonal psychotherapy that I offered at the Gestalt Center of Long Island for CEU credits. And what happened was, as I was researching that workshop, I came upon Abraham Maslow, who was the father of transpersonal psychotherapy. Most people know Maslow in terms of hierarchy of needs. He's the one who said you fulfill survival needs, and then these needs, and then those needs, and blah, 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 blah. And most people and most textbooks think that the top need is self-actualization. That's what's published. That's what he's known for.
And so that, right, and that sense of self-actualization is like I've fully become myself.
Myself, but that's from an ego place. Most people don't know that he added another need on top of that later on in his research and his work, and the need he added was a need for self-transcendence.
Right.
And it's brilliant because what he realized, people who are self-actualized start feeling this, is that all there is? There's got to be more. And that's the opening to this higher need in human development for self-transcendence. And I think that's what this retreat is actually pointing to. It's pointing to this next stage of human development above self-actualization. And in some ways, I feel like we're opening up the work at Shalom to something more and reaching a larger community of people who have done a lot of growth work and are really looking for something next, something higher.
So you don't even really know that last piece exists until you've done that self-actualization. You can't even know that there's another level to look at until you really do that initial work, the Shalom work.
That's right.
It reminds me, John, of, speaking of Jerry, like Jerry used to say, like, you need to build a strong ego and then offer it up to something larger than yourself. Like literally, you need to put it on the altar.
That's right.
Right? And this is Jerry language for exactly this, self-transcendence.
Self-transcendence.
It's almost like, good job for working your stuff, clarifying wounds and getting to be an integrated human, able to live your life on the planet. Great.
Yes.
Now what?
Now what?
Now what? Right. Yeah.
I also think that there's always been offerings such as the Path of the Mystic at Shalom, but that was not using the Shalom process. That was more of a story retreat, a narrative retreat, where people would explore different aspects of a story in the spiritual journey. I think this is the first time anyone's actually using the Shalom Network process to explore beyond the ego.
Right.
Yeah.
Breaking more new ground.
Breaking more ground.
And just as like the bonus kicker, it's John, you and I have been deeply involved in Shalom for decades, and this will be the first retreat we're actually leading.
We've never led together.
Yeah.
Except a men's gathering. I think we did a men's gathering once.
Yeah, we did do the men's gathering once, right?
But
and we've certainly been together in retreat a lot. But
yes.
But to sit at the front of the room together and be like, okay,
yes,
what do you want to do?
That alone is going to be worth the price of admission.
Well, we'll highlight that when we're talking about this retreat.
Just having the two of us together is worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
The two of us together in exploration of larger, wilder, freer dimensions of self. Like, wow, what a holy opportunity to play, right?
Sounds good.
The other thing I just want to put out is that because this is the first one, and because we're still designing it, we decided to keep the group intact. So it's only one group with a maximum of maybe 12 people, 11 or 12, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think we already have about 6 or 7 people signed up. So there's not a lot of space. So anyone who really does feel called or interested should register as soon as possible.
Yes, and you can register on the website. And so you would say, right? I know.
Good.
Plug that right there.
Yeah.
And I also just, so you think that you would say that this retreat is for somebody who's looking for a more intimate retreat setting and looking to push beyond the mat work that they've already encountered.
Correct.
Yes, and we're requiring they have a minimum of 3 Shalom retreats under their belts. And if it's someone we don't know or don't know well, we will call them and have a conversation just to see, what they're looking for and whether there's a fit and that type of thing.
So that's another selling point, is you might get a phone call from Jeff and John.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
A personal phone call.
Well, I think this is going to fill up right away.
Oh, good.
It's going to be fun. Might as well come and do it. So. Okay.
Sounds good.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Alexis.
Alexis.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
see
John.
you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, goodbye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.